Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmritamena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Gurum Sri Yutapadakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikeshendriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibhatatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namaha Namah Hiranyaviryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave Hare Krishna. So we are continuing our discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, fifth chapter. In the previous session, we studied the fifth chapter right up to the very end, and due to limitations of time, we could not conclude the entire chapter. There were close to around 8 or 9 verses that were left. And then the sixth chapter is a continuation of the fifth chapter in terms of topic. Towards the fifth chapter, Sri Narad Muni, the spiritual master of Srila Vyasadeva, appears to cure the despondent condition of his disciple. The despondency of Srila Vyasadeva, as was discussed over several sessions, is due to the fact that he had not provided or created exclusive literature, scripture, for the consumption of those who were engaged in pure devotional service of the Supreme Lord. He had provided literature that would satisfy those who were seeking pleasure through the senses or to the body. He had provided literature for those who were seeking mystic opulences, which is also in one sense gratification of the body, but in the real sense it is more at the somewhat subtle level or mental level. He had provided literature for the consumption of those whose objective was to attain liberation. However, after doing all of this, he was very dissatisfied. His dissatisfaction had one cause, and the dissatisfaction of Srila Vyasadeva could only be resolved, or rather, only someone who was transcendentally situated could resolve the issues that a personality such as Vyasadeva, who himself is an incarnation, could have. So it required the presence of Sri Narad Muni. Sri Narad Muni arrives, and then he begins explaining in quite some detail, saying that the primary defect of all these is because you have not provided exclusive literature which glorifies the Supreme Person, completely free from the objectives of those who are seeking sense gratification, free from the objectives of those who are seeking liberation. So such literature is Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srila Narad Muni encourages Srila Vyasadeva by giving him an account of the superiority of pure devotional service, the potency of pure devotional service, unmotivated devotional service. He then goes on to describe his life story. He says that pure devotional service, just to set the stage for bhakti and the quality of bhakti, he says he was born to a maid servant, a person who was not qualified. So he was born in a family who was not of much significance. His mother was a maid servant, but she had the good fortune of being situated in the service of transcendental sages. So the sages, the transcendentalists, the bhakti yogis, those who were well situated in samadhi, they gathered in an ashram during the rainy season for 4 months. This is Chaturmasya. During Chaturmasya, there are rains. Typically, it coincides with the rainy season, and as a consequence, travel by foot becomes difficult, and all the sages gathered. So, because of the presence of his mother in an ashram where she was a maid servant, Sri Narad Muni, who was not qualified by birth, so he first set the stage saying, I was not qualified by birth. My mother was a maid servant. I was not qualified by maturity. I was very young. I was not qualified by learning. I did not know what the internal scriptures were. I did not quite understand the intricacies of scriptures. So what was the qualification of Sri Narad Muni? He was simple. He was a boy, and there was the concept of Agyata Sukriti, where he was present and he was motivated because of his simplicity and because of the mercy of the extraordinary personalities who were in the ashram at that point in time. He was motivated to render service. What was the very specific service that was rendered by Sri Narad Muni? Sri Narad Muni very specifically rendered the service of accepting the remnants. It is a matter of significance. You see, during this 4-month stay, Sri Narad Muni in his previous lifetime could have rendered all kinds of service. He could have assisted in so many different ways. But why is it that there was a very specific mention here that he specifically took the remnants of the sages? You see, the sages had completed prasadam, and the remnants of whatever was left on the plates, he accepted the remnants, and he honored the remnants, the prasad, the Mahaprasad, which were left by the transcendental sages. This is the only thing which is being mentioned very significantly in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we should pay attention when a fact which is very simple is being presented with such profundity, leading to the actual evolution of someone as special as Narad Muni. Just understand that it is very significant. People when they, especially Srila Vyasadeva, Sukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, Shaunaka Rishi, these are personalities who are transcendental. Why would they speak about something which is insignificant? So a very specific incident of Sri Narad Muni accepting the prasad left over after the sages had accepted their food is being mentioned because that is a path of deliverance. So this Agyata Sukriti, where Narad Muni was not qualified by literary knowledge because he was a very young boy, he was not mature, he was not born in a highly situated family, but there was this Agyata Sukriti of him coming in touch with transcendental objects. What is the transcendental object? Transcendental object is a remnant of food taken by a sage who is qualified, who is transcendentally situated. You see, when iron comes in touch with fire, iron takes on the quality of fire. It becomes as hot and has the same level of potency. In a similar manner, a sage who is transcendently situated has the potency to convey the transcendence in everything he does. So this is being mentioned here. And this is the reason why our acharyas, very specifically Srila Rupa Goswami, did not, he mentioned this very clearly, that the seva in devotional service has to start with the tongue. Sevon mukehi jihva adav. This is very simple. So this is what is being mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam as the evolution step for Sri Narad Muni. This is a wonderful preaching strategy as well. Prepare prasadam, offer bhoga with great care. Prepare prasadam, offer bhoga with great care, and then treat people who come in touch with us with very wonderful remnants of Krishna prasadam. This is the strategy adopted by Srila Prabhupada as well, where the whole idea of being able to feed people Krishna prasadam is so profound, because when people come in touch with Krishna prasadam and they come in touch with the remnants which have been accepted by the Lord, they have been spiritualized, and as a consequence, automatically the spiritual subject matter of the remnants automatically destroys the material consciousness and qualifies the person to chant the holy names. Sevon Mukhehi Jihvadav. So this is the primary purpose where the Srimad Bhagavatam is picking up this particular incident of accepting of remnants. And they're putting it forth as a primary means of deliverance of Sri Narad Muni in his previous lifetime. So he eats that. What happens? See, for someone to accept the remnants of another, they have to first assume a subservient position. They have to become humble. They have to humble themselves and say that I'm ready to eat what you are leaving. You see, this is acceptance of a subordinate position of service. And then they accept it. When they accept it, they are also positioning themselves to receive mercy from the person who is situated higher. So the Guru's remnants allows the Guru to practically convey the knowledge to the student, because the student has now assumed a position of subordination. Subordination is immediately obtained when you start accepting the remnants of someone, right? And then automatically, because Sri Narad Muni in his previous lifetime, when he was the son of a maidservant, when he became a fitting vehicle, one, he did not have problems of being highborn. That's an obstacle. Oh, I am born in such and such family. I have this status. I have this education. I'm employed here. I do this. I earn this much, so on and so forth. He did not have that obstacle. So he was qualified. He did not have that obstacle. He did not have the obstacle of birth or qualification. He did not have any other obstacle of even the intelligence being completely taken over and coming in touch with this world in such unnatural ways. You see, as adults, when we grow up, we develop notions which are not conducive for devotional service. But children, they are very simple. And as a consequence, they are far, far more receptive to devotional points. They are far, far more receptive to transcendence. They are receptive to spiritual education. So Sri Narad Muni did not have the obstacle of birth. He did not have the obstacle of age. He was able to assume a subordinate position, and this was Agyata Sukriti. He was able to accept the remnants. So the moment the sages could see that here was someone who was humble, what did they do? They not only allowed him to take the remnants, they also took particles of faith from their heart and placed the particles of faith in Narad Muni's heart. In his previous lifetime, the sages gave him faith, gave him instructions, and gave him initiation. He was initiated into Harinam. He was initiated into the glories of the Lord. Right? So how did that happen? They first deposited their faith, Ado Shraddha. That Shraddha which is in their heart, which is the condensed Shraddha, which is actually the experiences of transcendence, which is in the heart of these sages. Those experiences were taken, and that Shraddha, a fragment of which was deposited in the fitting heart of a disciple who has become subservient. That particular particle of spirit, faith, had the ability to completely destroy his material affinity. So he lost his affinity for the material world. He became completely free from ignorance and passion. No more attachments, no more lust, no more fear. He became completely free from the effect of the lower modes. He became situated in the mode of goodness, and he began the practice of devotional service. Okay, this was the topic that was given in the previous chapter. I'm going to conclude 8 verses, and then we're going into chapter 6. Chapter 6 is a further conclusion, or rather, it describes the journey of Sri Narad Muni. Okay, where he started in the previous lifetime as the son of a maidservant in the ashram, right up to how he became Sri Narad Muni. Okay, so we were in 34. I think we had around 8 verses. Yeah, 33. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Amayo yascha bhutanam jayate yena subrata tadeva hi amayam dravyam napunati chikitsitam. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? So, devotional service is being described here, where the description is of the art of curing disease by depositing a similar particle. Homeopathy, for instance, the whole subject matter of homeopathy is such that they will take poisons, or they would first ask you to describe symptoms, and the symptoms would equal the ingestion of certain poisons. And then what they do is they take a very, very minute, absolutely insignificant amount of the same poison and then make it into a pill, a tincture, and then ask us to consume the same. And that has the ability to cure the problem and the symptoms caused by, coming in touch with certain kind of, problems. So the idea is, the same example was given in the previous session, like hing, asafoetida. It is very tamasic. Hing on its own is an extraordinarily tamasic substance. It is very much in the mode of ignorance. Why is it added to prasad? Why is it added to food? It is added to food because when you add hing to food and the hing goes into our body, because of its minute quantity, it has the ability to relieve us of the tamasic state of our digestive system. It helps us digest other things. So something which is being added in small quantity has the potency to cure something which is of a bigger nature. So similarly, devotional service is such that we are able to execute all the activities that we undertake in this world. But since we undertake all these activities in the consciousness of being a servant of Krishna and for his pleasure, these activities have the ability to deliver us. So one may eat, but if they eat Krishna Prasad, it is liberating. If they eat ordinary food, it's binding. So that's the meaning here. Evam nrinam kriya yoga sarve sansrita hetavah taevatmana vinashaya kalpante kalpitah pare. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. Yadatra kriyate karma bhagavat paritoshanam jnanam yattad adinam hi bhakti yoga samanvitam. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called bhakti yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord. And what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. Kurvana yatra karmani bhagavat shikshaya sakrit grananti gunanamani krishnasya nusmaranti cha. Krishnasya anusmaranti cha. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumna Niruddhaya Namah Sankarsanaya Cha. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his plenary expansions Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshana. Iti Murti Abhidanena Mantramurtim Mamurtikam Yajate Yagya Purusham Cha Samyak Darshanaha Puman. Thus, he is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who has no material form. He has no material form because his body is transcendental. He has a form, He has no material form. It is a transcendental form. Okay? Imam Swanigamam Brahman Avetyamad Anustitam Adanyagyanam Aishwaryam Swasmin Bhavam Chakeshavaha. O Brahmana, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna, I was endowed first with transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential parts of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate loving service. So, three stages. I was first inculcated in the confidential knowledge. He was first given knowledge. And then with spiritual opulences, potency that comes after one obtains knowledge and engages in devotional service in knowledge. And then finally, he was provided intimate loving service, which means he was delivered from the material body and he was acting in the spiritual body. Now I'm going to talk about it now. त्वमपि अदभ्रश्रुतविश्रुतं विभोः समप्यते येन विदान् बुभुत्सितं प्राक्याहि दुःखैर्मुहुर् अर्दितामानं संक्लेशनिर्वाणं मुशन्ति नान्यथा. Please, this is a plea from Narad Muni. Please, therefore, describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men, at the same mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Okay, so this is the conclusion of the 5th chapter. So we are now going to go into chapter 6, and this is a conversation between Narad Muni and Vyasadeva. And this conversation is a beautiful conversation because Sri Narad Muni describes his transition from a material body to his present state, which is phenomenal. You see, Srila Prabhupada, I don't know if some of you have heard about this, in the Soho Street Temple in London, apparently there is a permanent seat which is kept for Sri Narad Muni. The reason why a permanent seat is kept for Narad Muni is because there was one particular occasion when Srila Prabhupada was giving a class. And while giving a class, the devotees who were assembled in the class noticed that Srila Prabhupada was quite distracted. He kept looking in one corner of the room when he was giving a lecture in Soho Street in London. He kept looking at one corner of the room and he was smiling. So it was very unusual behavior because normally Srila Prabhupada wouldn't do that. So he kept looking in one corner of the room and he was smiling while giving a class. So once the class concluded, the devotees approached Srila Prabhupada and asked him, saying, "We saw something unusual. You were smiling and you were looking in one corner of the room." See, those days devotees, they really weren't, I guess they were having some proximity with Srila Prabhupada, because this was a very early days. There was some intimate exchange, and as a consequence, devotees could approach Srila Prabhupada and talk to him and question him on his demeanor, on his appearance, on his, on their observations of his actions. So they inquired from Srila Prabhupada saying, "Why is it that you are constantly smiling, looking at the corner? What happened?" Then Srila Prabhupada told the devotees that Sri Narad Muni had appeared while he was giving a class in the Soho Street Temple. So I just remembered that Sri Narad Muni, he is the transcendental personality who appears out of his own sweet will to encourage those who are engaged in devotional service. Needless to say, Srila Prabhupada had embarked on an extraordinary mission while being on the planet, and Sri Narad Muni wanted to give him encouragement, right? He wanted to simply show his appreciation given the connection which he has with devotional service, with his extraordinary potency of being an instrument. So he appeared there just to somehow participate in Srila Prabhupada's Leela, so to speak, or whatever Srila Prabhupada was engaged in the propagation of the holy names and the mission of Lord Chaitanya. And Srila Prabhupada was able to see him because Srila Prabhupada's eyes were purified. They were transcendently, he was transcendently situated. He could see things which others couldn't. So to this day, there is a seat in the Soho Street Temple. So I hear, I have not been to the Soho Street Temple. I hear that there's a seat in the Soho Street Temple which Srila Prabhupada had very specially requested the devotees to keep for this transcendental visitor. It is not unusual. I have heard in one of the last few appearances and lectures of Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, my spiritual master, he made a statement which is quite profound. And he said, there are visitors. Oh, it was his Vyas Puja, sorry, the last Vyas Puja. He said, there are visitors here whom you cannot see. They have come and they are a part of my eternal family. And they have come here. And those of you who are here, who are very sincere, will go with great blessings. So he made a statement as well that, there were visitors in Gitanagari during the Vyas Puja who had specifically come, and they were perhaps, highly situated entities from the spiritual sky. And he was able to see them. Obviously, that I was not able to see. I'm saying that the other visitors are not able to see. But the transcendently situated personalities, they have vision and they are able to see. So it's not unusual. I just remembered the fact that Sri Narad Muni is so unusual that he travels around. Right? He's always on the move and he is present to enthuse others in the act of devotional service. Anyways, so this chapter 6 is a conversation of how the son of the maidservant, after receiving Agyata Sukriti, after receiving mercy, after receiving initiation, how did he transform himself into Sri Narada? So that is chapter 6. Okay, let's begin that. There are some very, very important, profound instructions given here, and we will enjoy those. Sutta uvacha evam nishamya bhagavan devarishir janma karma cha bhuyah paprachalam brahman vyasaha satyavati sutaha. Sutta said, O Brahmanas, thus hearing all about Sri Narad Muni's birth and activities, Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God and son of Satyavati, inquired as follows. Vyasa uvacha bhikshubhir vipravasite Vijnanadeshtribhistava Vartamano Vayasi Tata Kim Akaroda Bhavan. Sri Vyasadeva said, what did you do after the departure of the great sages who had instructed you in scientific transcendental knowledge before the beginning of your present birth? Natural question. What did you do? You received transcendental knowledge. You had the remnants. They found a fitting vehicle. And they were Tattvadarshis. They bestowed the faith which was in their heart onto your heart. What did you do with that knowledge? Swayambhuva kaya vritya vartitam te param vayah katam chedam udas rakshihi kale prapte kalevaram. O son of Brahma, how did you pass your life after initiation? And how did you attain this body, having quit your old one in due course? Prakalpa vishayametam smritim te muni sattama nahi esha vyadyadat kala esha sarva nirakritihi. O great sage, time annihilates everything in due course. So how is it that this subject matter, which happened prior to this day of Brahma, is still fresh in your memory, undisturbed by time? You see, when we take birth, we don't remember our previous existence. We lose track of our previous existence when we are passing through the birthing process. The birthing process has the ability to eliminate memory. It is said that the child in the womb has the ability to remember previous existences. And as a consequence, the child is in prayer of not wanting to go through all the material disturbances of being in this world. However, while the birthing process takes place, automatically the person is forced to forget the previous lifetime. There are impressions, but the person forgets the vivid sequences of whatever happened. I have come across many children who still carry a lot of traits of previous subtle bodies. You see, in the course of my being able to assist, some of the situations, I've come across very specific traits where children, because they're very young and they have not been in human existence, they have been in higher existence, they have had certain, been a part of other, universes, and they carry the propensities of such subtle bodies even in this birth when they come into a human body. And as a consequence, they bring forth those traits, and those traits are not fully understood by the parents. It's frightening because they can see things which the parents can't. It's frightening to hear your small child saying that they're able to see something and the parent cannot. Why is the child able to see something? It is because the child's subtle body from a previous existence had such powers. And that subtle body has not still yet completely, attuned itself to the present circumstances, and it has not been dulled by the video games and TV. Let me put it that way, very bluntly. So it has not become dull, by coming in touch with the material world fully. So in such cases, the question is very pertinent. How is it that Sri Narad Muni is able to remember that he was the son of a maidservant? He is able to remember very vividly all the sequences of the fact that he took the remnants of prasadam. He is able to remember that faith was rendered and transcendental knowledge was provided, and then the sages were able to inculcate and give him initiation, and he was able to practice. So Srila Vyasadeva is asking him that how are you not subject to the normal course of forgetting things, which is normally seen in the material world? Okay, it's a very normal question because people forget. Then Sri Narada said, Narado Vacha, Bhikshubir Vipravasite Vijnana Destibir Mama Vartamano Vayasi Adye Tatayetad Akarshasam. Sri Narada said, the great sages who had imparted scientific knowledge of transcendence to me departed for other places, and I had to pass my life in this way. So they came for those 4 months, deposited deep faith into his heart, gave him the glories of the holy name, and he began cultivating devotional service because the impetus was given, right? He was initiated, and then they departed. They gave him the gift and they departed. Ekatmaja me janani yoshin muda chakinkari Mai atmaje nanyagato chakre snehanubandhanam. I was the only son of my mother, who was not only a simple woman, but a maidservant as well. Since I was her only offspring, she had no other alternative for protection. She bound me with the tie of affection. So, even though he was provided with transcendental knowledge, he is now saying why he continued to live with his mother instead of traveling with those sages who gave him initiation. In those days, it was not uncommon for the disciple to travel the moment they receive initiation so that they could render pure devotional service to the guru, and they could then receive even more sukriti. They could receive mercy by rendering the devotional service to the lotus feet of Guru. So now he is explaining that his mother was quite alone. She was a very simple person. She couldn't really comprehend all these big deal initiation, transcendental knowledge. She had this very simple bond with her son, and he was an object of great affection for her, and she did not want him to move. So she bound me with the tie of affection. I could not travel with my guru. He came and he gave me initiation. He gave me all this. He left. I could not travel. That's what he's saying here. Text 7. Shashvatantra nakalpasid yogakshemam mamicheti isasya hi vase loko yoshadaru mayata. She wanted to look after my maintenance properly, but because she was not independent, she was not able to do anything for me. The world is under the full control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, everyone is like a wooden doll in the hands of a puppet master. So he is describing that his life continued. She could not really arrange for anything beyond what was in her capacity. So life was just what it was. Aham chattad brahma kule ऊषिस्वां स्तद उपेक्षया दिग्देशकालव्युत्पन्नो balakah panchahayanah. When I was a mere child of 5 years, I lived in a Brahmana school. I was dependent on my mother's affection and had no experience of different lands. Ekada nirgatam gehat duhantim nishigam pati Sarpo dashat pada sprishtaha kripanam kala choritaha. Once upon a time, my poor mother, when going out one night to milk a cow, was bitten on the leg by a serpent influenced by supreme time. So this is the acceptance of Kala. Kala is supreme time, the Lord's will. So Kala, as one of the factors or opulences or features of understanding God, is a part of material nature. It's not a part of spiritual nature. Spiritual nature does not quite operate under Kala. Spiritual nature is not managed by the time factor, which is managing the material nature. So he says, due to supreme time, Kala, his mother was unfortunately bitten by a snake, a serpent. Tata tada tad aham ishasya bhaktanam savabishpatah abipsatah anugraham manyamanah pratishtam disham uttaram. I took this as the special mercy of the Lord, who always desires benediction for his devotees. And so thinking, I started for the north. So he said, as a very small child, because he had been bestowed with transcendental knowledge, knowledge in the heart, and with his desires properly aligned, completely free from the pangs of passion and ignorance, after the death of his mother, the boy was philosophically able to understand that this was a benediction. Understanding that this was a benediction, he didn't quite bemoan the fact or lament that he was left alone. He started out from that particular place saying, my tie to this particular place is with my mother. Since the mother has passed on, I don't have any more ties here. Let me start moving out. Okay, so he started walking out and he took the northern direction. Svitan Janapadam Statra Puragrama Vrajakaran Ketakarvatavatischa Vanani Upavanani cha. After my departure, I passed through many flourishing metropolises, towns, villages, animal farms, mines, agricultural lands, valleys, flower gardens, nursery gardens, and natural forests. He's done a lot of traveling. Chitradhatu vichitradrin Ibabagna bujadruman Jalasayan Shiva Jalan Nalinihi Surasevitaha Chitraswanaihi Patrarate Vibramad Brahmarashriyaha. I passed through hills and mountains full of reservoirs of various minerals like gold, silver, and copper, and through tracts of land with reservoirs of water filled with beautiful lotus flowers fit for the denizens of heaven, decorated with bewildered bees and singing birds. What is very interesting is that Sri Narad Muni passed through all these places and he didn't stop. He didn't quite stop because he was not enamored and he was not under the influence of passion and ignorance. He did not stop. He continued moving. He passed through cities, he passed through towns, he passed through villages, he passed through gardens, reservoirs, whatever the case may be. He was not attached. He kept moving. Interesting. Nalavenu sarasla tanban kushakishchaka graha gavaram ekaevati yatoham adraksham vipinam mahat Goram pratibhayakaram Vyalolukat Shivagjiram. I then passed alone through many forests of rushes, bamboo reeds, sharp grass, weeds, and caves which were very difficult to go through alone. I visited deep, dark, and dangerously fearful forests, which were the playards of snakes, owls, and jackals. Parishrante, Parishrant, Parishrant Indriyatmaham, Tritparito Bubukistah, Snatva Pitva Hrade, Nadya, Upaprishto Gatashramaha. Thus traveling, I felt tired, both bodily and mentally, and I was both thirsty and hungry. So I took a bath in a river, lake, and also drank water. By contacting water, I got relief from my exhaustion. Interesting. The interesting part is that when Sri Narad Muni is explaining his previous existence, it is interesting that he is saying and sharing details, minute details. One can understand, I passed through villages, I passed through towns, I passed through cities. And then he's sharing this minute detail that I was exhausted, I was mentally tired, and I was hungry. So what did he do? He simply partook water and he got relief from exhaustion. This is again a symptom of someone who is in the mode of goodness, where they have the ability to tolerate the pangs of the body. So he has ability to tolerate the pangs of the body. So all these verses of descriptions of him not being enamored by what he saw, him not being overcome by what he saw, and him not being completely overcome the physical condition of the body, are all symptoms of someone who is situated in the mode of goodness. He was well situated. That's the reason why the verses are even describing all this. Otherwise, why would Srimad Bhagavatam be wasting space talking about the minute details? Why would the sage talk about his previous lifetime and share minute details? Tasmin nirmanuje pippalopastashtitah atmanatmanam atmastam yatashrutam achintayam. After that, under the shadow of a banyan tree in an uninhabited forest, I began to meditate upon the super soul situated within, using my intelligence as I had learned from the liberated souls. Okay, now this is a very important statement here in terms of someone who is in the mode of goodness. He is not distracted by the body. He is not distracted or attracted by comforts, or rather lack of comforts. He, as a young boy, had the ability to leave a secure surrounding. So he was not disturbed by the fact that he wanted something secure. So he moved away from the cities, towns, villages, and he finally comes to an uninhabited forest to sit down and to begin his process of meditation as instructed by the transcendental sages. So one of the things that we would like to understand is that he uses the word, I began to meditate upon the super soul situated within, using my intelligence. So here is a description of Buddhi Yoga. The description of Buddhi Yoga is the use of intelligence and the cultivation and the use of intelligence to access the Supreme. The same thing is being spoken about in the Bhagavad Gita, a very significant 2 verses, where Arjuna asks in text 54 of 2nd chapter, 2.54. Arjuna vacha stita pragnisya kabasha samadhitastasya keshava stitadehi kim prabeseta kim masita vrajeta kim. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk? Text 55, this is Krishna's reply to Arjuna's question. Shri Bhagavanu vacha prajahati yat kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmani eva atmanatushtaha stita prajnastadocchite. very significant verse, 2.55. Okay, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, complete freedom from desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction. We should underline the word mental concoction. Okay? And when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Now, this is samadhi. Someone who is completely free from desires that are born out of mental concoction. So, what is a normal state of a human being? What is our normal state? The normal state of a human being is, it can be compared to, for example, a chariot, the analogy of a chariot, where the chariot has horses. The horses of the chariot are held by reins. The reins are held by the charioteer, and then the passenger sits directing the direction and the places and the destination of the chariot. This is normal. But our body and our own existence is abnormal. Why is it abnormal? Our existence is as follows. If you enter into, for example, you hire a taxi cab. From externally, the taxi cab looks very normal. But then you hire a taxi cab and you sit in the passenger seat, and then you tell the driver, saying, I want to go from, let us say, wherever you are in New York City to New Jersey. And the driver says, no, I can't take you to New Jersey. You cannot get off my cab. In fact, I have no control over the cab. The cab knows where to go. It would go wherever it wants because I have no control. This is a typical situation of human existence, where we are situated in the body. The senses get attracted to their objects of attraction. The eye looks at something, gets attracted. The nose tends to get attracted by the scent, right? Taste, hearing. Okay, we get attracted to the objects of enjoyment for the senses. The moment the senses see something and they get attracted, they drag the mind along, and the mind has no control. So the car example, the car has an independent flow of wherever it wants to go. The steering wheel has absolutely no ability to control the wheels. The wheels can go wherever they want. So our intelligence itself, being very weak, is captured by the attraction of the senses and attraction of the reins, the mind itself, the weakness of the mind. And our intelligence, which is compared to the driver or the charioteer, has no ability to control the vehicle. Our intelligence is very weak. So when Narad Muni is making a statement here saying that I began to meditate upon the super soul situated within using my intelligence, what exactly was he trying to tell us? What was he trying to say? That he was trying to meditate upon the super soul who is within using his intelligence. Using his intelligence, he was able to connect to the instructions and the transcendental knowledge that was revealed by the sages. So the appearance of knowledge means Sri Narad Muni understood his original position of not being a body, being understanding that he was not this physical body, understanding that he was not this mind. He was able to fully understand that he was a part and parcel of Krishna. He was able to practically remember the sambandha which the sages had given him. When the Guru gives initiation, practically the Guru is giving us sambandha gyan. In a nutshell, he is giving us sambandha gyan, but it is like a flower bud which is yet to be opened and watered by our effort after initiation. So the initiation is the depositing of sambandha gyan into our heart. What is the specific relationship we have with Krishna? So Sri Narad Muni had received that sambandha gyan from the Gurus, when he met them in the ashram and he was given initiation. Okay? So he invoked that particular intelligence. And he remembered that I'm not this body, so I'm not going to be enamored by the surroundings. I'm not going to be intimidated by the surroundings. I'm not this body. My sambandha has to do with Krishna. This is jnana. So he invoked that particular knowledge which was given by his gurus. And using that knowledge, he was able to control his senses. He was able to control his mind. When the word intelligence, buddhi, is being used, one has to understand that buddhi is very specifically being used here because buddhi in reality is intelligence that has come in touch with transcendental knowledge. When intelligence comes in touch with transcendental knowledge, it has the ability to control the mind and the senses. When intelligence is not in touch with transcendental knowledge, the intelligence will be controlled by the mind and the senses. There is no control whatsoever. So here, because there was initiation, because there was mantra given, because an identity was already sown into the heart saying you are a servant, that particular intelligence which was provided by the spiritual master allowed him to grab the reins of the mind and hold it very strongly. By holding it very strongly, he was able to control the senses. The senses cannot be controlled otherwise. So the intelligence, the word being used here about buddhi, is very significant because he is saying he controlled everything by the knowledge of transcendence that was deposited into his heart by his guru through the process of initiation, through the process of transcendental service. Okay? Dhyayatas charanambojam bhava nirjita chetasham autkantyashru kalakasya hridayasin me sanner harihi. As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared on the lotus of my heart. This is phenomenal. This is phenomenal because Sri Narad Muni fit the description of Krishna in 2.55 of the Bhagavad Gita, which we just read. What does he say? Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmani evatmana tushtaha stita prajna stadochate. Narad Muni was stita prajna. He was in samadhi. He was able to grab the reins, which is the mana. By holding on to the reins, he was able to control the raging horses of the senses. Because he had come in touch with transcendental subject matter, because he had engaged in pure devotional service, his senses were purified and they were free from passion and ignorance, and he was able to control them. As soon as he was able to control them, he was also able to focus and chant the holy names. Because of his simplicity and sincerity and the potency of what he had received, Krishna immediately appeared in the lotus of his heart, which is fascinating. He was in samadhi so soon, very soon. He says very soon, as soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet. The statement is, as soon as he began to meditate. Text 17. Premati varnibhinna pulakango tinirvrataha ananda samplavet lino napasyam ubayam mune. O Vyasadeva, at that time, being exceedingly overpowered by feelings of happiness, every part of my body became separately enlivened. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could not see both myself and the Lord. This is coming in touch with an experience. You see, faith, the initial faith, was deposited into his heart by his guru in the ashram. The guru was pleased with the service. He saw the simplicity of the child and he gave him this great gift of transcendence. He deposited initial faith. That initial faith was then further cultivated by Sri Narad Muni while he was in the ashram and in separation from his mother after she passed away. This cultivation of faith was done by the chanting of the holy names. This faith blossomed into Sambandha Gyan. This Sambandha Gyan showed what was his particular relationship with Krishna. And the moment he sat down, he was able to rein in the senses and he was able to focus on the holy names in samadhi. As soon as he did that, Krishna appears because now Narad Muni has crossed over. Internally, he has crossed over. You see, he has crossed over the material sky and he has reached the spiritual sky. Krishna is meeting him halfway through. He's meeting him. He's coming and he's appearing in his hot lotus to give him instructions. Hmm? And that as soon as Krishna appears in his heart, the senses of someone who is in touch with transcendence, who is coming in touch with a transcendental experience, is completely ecstatic from top to bottom. He becomes completely ecstatic. This is a very powerful, extraordinary spiritual experience. Right? Now we are not talking about faith. Faith is required when there are no experiences. Now we are talking about experiences. His initial faith has now matured into an experience. This experience of transcendence, of coming in touch with the Lord, is being described. Okay? Rupam Bhagavato yattan manakantam suchapaham apasyan sahastos tate vaiklavya durmanaiva. The transcendental form of the Lord, as it is, satisfies the mind's desire and at once erases all mental incongruities. Upon losing that form, I suddenly got up, being perturbed, as is usual when one loses that which is desirable. So Krishna appears as if to encourage him in the lotus of his heart. And in the particular moment of seeing Krishna, the super soul, manifesting in his heart, Sri Narad Muni loses control and he's unable to communicate. He becomes transfixed because of the ecstatic experience. But just at that point in time, he loses that particular vision. And he becomes quite perturbed, disturbed, because he suddenly is not able to see the object of his love. Okay? Didrikshustadaham bhuyah pranidaya manohridi vikshamanopi napasyam avitrapatat ivaturaha. I desired to see again the transcendental form of the Lord, but despite my attempts to concentrate upon the heart with eagerness to view the form again, I could not see him anymore. And thus dissatisfied, I was very much aggrieved. Okay, I'm going to stop here because it's already close to 9:30. So we will continue again in the subsequent week. I want to see if there are any questions. I will take some questions for the next few minutes. Otherwise, we will continue in the on Monday. Okay, we'll conclude the chapter on Monday. There are 15 more verses. So now we want to stop on verse 19. In verse 19, Sri Narad Muni has manifested the Supreme Lord. He has had an experience. His guru gave him faith. The faith transformed itself into experience because of the effort put in by the disciple, because of the sincerity. Seeing the sincerity and the effort and the fructification of the application of intelligence and the fruit of his initiation, the Lord himself appears. And then the Lord disappears. This puts Sri Narad Muni in a very perturbed state. Okay? In the subsequent session on Monday, we will conclude this chapter by seeing how Sri Narad Muni, after this vision, transformed into who he was, the transcendental personality who keeps moving from one planet to the other. Okay, and he encourages devotional service. Okay, I'm going to wait to see if there are any questions. It is now 9:29. Maybe a couple of minutes. I don't see any now, but if there are any questions, I can take those. All right, so I don't see any questions, so we'll meet again on Monday and we'll conclude chapter 6. Thank you. Hare Krishna.